The dog sitting job. I was 22 when this happened, fresh out of college, broke, and taking whatever work I could find in my small town. Babysitting, cleaning, errands, anything that paid cash. One day, a man named Martin called me. He said he'd be traveling for a week and needed someone to stay at his house to look after his golden retriever Buddy. He explained that Buddy was anxious and needed someone overnight, not just a quick visit. The pay was good, so I said yes. When I met Martin, he looked ordinary. Mid-40s, tall, with glasses and a navy jacket. Maybe a little too friendly, but not enough to set off alarms. His house was on the edge of town, surrounded by woods. Inside, it felt dated. Beige carpets, heavy curtains, but clean. He showed me where everything was, how often to walk Buddy, and told me I'd be sleeping in the guest room off the living room. The first 2 nights were fine. I watched TV, walked Buddy, then slept with him curled up at the foot of the bed. The third night changed everything. While scrolling my phone in bed, I noticed something odd on the dresser. A digital alarm clock. It looked too new compared to the rest of the room. Black plastic, bright blue LED numbers. I leaned in closer and saw a tiny pinhole above the display, angled perfectly at the bed. My stomach dropped. It looked exactly like the hidden camera clocks I'd read about online. I picked it up. It was heavy, with a faint buzzing sound inside. At that moment, Buddy lifted his head and whined. Then I heard it. A door closing. Not the front door. Somewhere deeper inside the house. Every hair on my body stood up. Martin wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. This was Wednesday. Footsteps followed. Slow. On the carpet. Getting closer. I quickly set the clock down and locked the door just as the steps stopped outside. Then, Martin's voice. Calm. Slightly out of breath. He said he left something in the room and needed to get it. When I didn't answer, he claimed the clock was just a motion sensor for the dog and that he hadn't told me so I wouldn't freak out. I backed away, covering my mouth, heart racing. When I still stayed silent, his voice changed. He started pounding on the door, shouting, demanding I open it. Buddy barked furiously, throwing himself at the door. My only way out was the window. My hands shook as I struggled with the latch. Martin yelled that if I didn't open up, he'd use his spare key and call the cops, saying I broke in. I didn't wait. I shoved the window open, climbed out, and ran barefoot through the yard and down the gravel drive until I reached the road. I called my mom, who picked me up minutes later. The next day, I blocked his number and called a lawyer. But without proof, photos, recordings, it was my word against his. I never went back, never got paid, and the woman who recommended me stopped responding. For weeks, I had nightmares of that little black lens staring at me. And to this day, I sometimes wake up certain that someone is watching. The Basement Airbnb. This happened last year. My girlfriend Hannah and I booked an Airbnb in a small town outside of Ashford, about 3 hours from home. It looked cozy in the photos, a 2-story house with a porch, hardwood floors, warm lighting. The listing mentioned one small detail I didn't think much about at the time, that the basement storage room was off limits. When we arrived, the host, Leonard, was already waiting on the porch. He was in his late 50s, tall, slightly hunched, with thinning gray hair and a perfectly ironed flannel shirt. He smiled when we shook hands, but his eyes lingered too long. His voice was polite, but there was something controlling in the way he explained the house rules. Inside, the place looked older than the pictures. A faint smell of dust mixed with something sweet hung in the air. The living room had an old TV, the kitchen was dated, and the bedroom upstairs had a big bed under a ceiling fan. When we came back down, Leonard stopped at the basement door. A heavy padlock hung from it. His tone grew sharp. "This stays locked," he said flatly. Then he wished us a pleasant stay and left. The first night was quiet. except for a dull thud sometime after midnight. I told myself it was the house settling. The second night, around 2:30 a.m., Hannah and I both woke to footsteps. Slow, deliberate, right below us. Then a pause. Then more footsteps. Hannah whispered that she heard breathing between them. We lay frozen, staring at the ceiling until dawn. By the third morning, the house felt heavier. I checked the basement door. It was still locked, but when I leaned close, I smelled stale air mixed with something sour. That night, the noises began earlier. Metallic clinking, then footsteps again, over and over for an hour. The fourth night was the breaking point. While getting ready for bed, Hannah stared at the smoke detector above the bed and asked if it looked strange. I climbed up to check. In the center was a small black dot, shinier than the plastic around it. My stomach dropped. I unscrewed it. Inside was a tiny battery-powered camera, its green light on. Panic surged. Searching the room, I found another lens poking through a hole near the dresser mirror, also pointed at the bed. That was it. We shoved our stuff into bags and left immediately, calling the police from a gas station. Officers met us there and followed us back. This time, the basement door was wide open. It had been locked before. They went down. Minutes later, we heard shouting. Then one of the officers called us down. Leonard was there, hiding in a closet, with a monitor connected to the cameras. He was arrested on the spot for invasion of privacy and trespassing. Hannah and I never finished our stay. Airbnb tried to silence us with a voucher, but the damage was done. To this day, we don't book rentals anymore. Only hotels. The roommate. My name is Daniel, and this happened just a few months ago. I was sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with a guy named Victor. We met through a housing forum online. He seemed quiet, polite, a little awkward, but responsible. For the first couple of months, everything was fine. Our schedules barely overlapped. I worked mornings, he worked nights, so we didn't see each other much. Then, I started noticing small things in my room. My closet door left open when I was sure I'd closed it. My desk chair angled toward the bed, though I never left it that way. I brushed it off. One Saturday morning, I was cleaning when I noticed a tiny black dot in the corner of the wall near the ceiling. At first, I thought it was a nail, but when I got closer, my blood ran cold. It was a miniature camera, pointed straight at my bed. My hands shook as I pulled it down. It had a slot for a memory card, but the card was gone. The only person with access to my room was Victor. That night, I hid the camera in my nightstand drawer under some socks. My plan was simple. If he came looking for it, I'd know it was him. 2 nights passed with nothing. On the third night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of wood sliding. My nightstand drawer. I opened my eyes just a crack. Victor was in my room, standing over the drawer, searching. I froze, heart racing, trying to stay still. Then he stopped. Slowly, he turned his head toward me and said quietly, "I know you're awake." Ice ran through me. He asked what I had done with it. I sat up, demanding to know why he planted a camera. He claimed it was to prove I was stealing from him. I told him that was a lie. The camera had been aimed at my bed. We argued in whispers that escalated into shouting. I grabbed the camera from the drawer, stormed into the kitchen, and threw it in the trash, yelling that I'd tell the landlord everything. Victor just stood in the hallway, fists clenched, staring at me blankly before walking back to his room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, the camera was gone from the trash. Since then, Victor barely speaks to me, but the way he looks at me when we pass in the hall makes my skin crawl. I've searched my room dozens of times for more cameras. I haven't found any, but every night I lie awake wondering if there's still one hidden somewhere, and sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps stop right outside my door.